Hey guys, welcome back to Cough Country. It is Steve with your cannabis news. I know you guys live busy lives, well I am here to catch you up on what you missed. And today, we are starting off in Ohio, where legalization has had some unintended consequences for police dogs. And they're so cute too. We'll talk about it. Then we continue our series of strains of yesterday, and we take a trip to the island of Hawaii and check out the legendary Maui Wowie. I'm pumped about that one. And finally, Native American tribes are starting to choose cannabis over casinos to provide for their communities. And it makes total sense to me. All that is happening right now on Cough Country News.
No sticks, no seeds, just news.
From the Cough Country News Desk, it's Steve with your cannabis news. It's
been said you can't teach an old dog new tricks. But what about highly trained police dogs? I mean, they're pretty smart, right? Nope, not even then. Ohio State Representative Sean Brennan said that it's an unintended consequence of marijuana legalization, but Ohio is going to have to retire over 300 doggos that cannot unlearn the scent of cannabis. In November, citizens of Ohio got together and put Issue 2, which would legalize recreational marijuana, on the ballot, and despite most of their elected officials trying to tell them to vote no, they voted with their middle finger and said yes. So now, even though you can't buy it anywhere yet, it is officially legal to grow and possess cannabis in the state of Ohio. But that's actually creating a real problem for the state's police force, as they have to pivot to allow cannabis possession and undergo retraining themselves. The hardworking dogs trained to detect marijuana and other drugs can't differentiate between one drug and another. If they detect something they've been trained on, they will let someone know. And if the officer does a search and finds legal cannabis, that spells trouble. One officer, talking about his furry partner, said, quote, if he goes up on a traffic stop and had a sniff around the car, and if he was trained in marijuana and hit on it, we would search that car right there. But that's a no-no now because marijuana is legal, so you can't go into the car because of it. It would invalidate the search and any evidence found would be inadmissible. So even if there was a whole load of crack cocaine in the back, if there was any cannabis, a lawyer could argue that's what the dog smelled and there was just no cause to search the car. Representative Brennan then added the fact that we now are going to need 300 canines like overnight in Ohio. The demand for dogs and training is going to be at a premium. And that's not going to be cheap for the taxpayer. Right out of the gate, with all the base training they get, means qualified police dogs cost the department $7,500 to $11,000 per pup, let alone the training they have to do with their handler and getting them set up. So the bill going through the government is hoping to lock in $6 million in taxpayer dollars, or $20,000 per dog, to get them replaced. Initially, that'll come out of the state fund, but they are proposing that this is yet another thing that cannabis taxes will pay for sometime in the future. But what happens to the dogs when they're retired? Well, they usually live with their officer handlers anyway, so now when they retire, they'll be able to buy them for just $1 and make sure they have a good home and a good thank you for their service. All right, guys, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with a message from our sponsors, and we got more news for you after that.
This is cannabis. And this is cannabis. And this is cannabis. And this is cannabis. When you put them all together, you've got medicine.
Hey guys, thanks for sticking around. Let's get back into the news. So today we're continuing our look into the strains of yesterday, and we're exploring one of the legends, one of the godfathers, or maybe I should say godmothers of cannabis as we know it today, and far and away the most famous strain to ever come out from the islands of Hawaii out there in the Pacific. If you haven't already figured it out, we're talking about the one, the only Maui Wowie. Maui Wowie was born in the volcanic soil and tropical climate of the Aloha State. It wasn't really on anyone's radar till the 60s and 70s, not really long after Hawaii became a state in the first place, and cannabis culture was getting into full swing. It's a frosty bud with a euphoric high and some good medicinal qualities as well. It'll take you on a trip straight to the islands. It's a sativa landrace, or pakalolo to the Hawaiians, that's native to the islands. But some people claim there are little Afghan genetics mixed in there too. It naturally comes in around 20% THC, so in the days when most of what everyone had was around 8%, it was head and shoulders above for sure. Legend has it, though, that Maui Wowie got its name from the bridging of cultures kind of moment, you know? In the 60s, Maui was filling up with counterculturalists and hippies ducking out of the Vietnam War. Hawaii had only just become a state, remember, and the native Hawaiians, they were not fans of all these long hairs moving in. They were not getting along, to say the least. Then one day, on the summer solstice, the hippies threw a big psychedelic party with plenty of their best green to go around. And while the Hawaiians drove up like they were going to bust up the joint, but instead they busted out their own stash of what they had been growing, and suffice it to say, minds were blown. They called it Nahiku Maui, which is pretty much where it was grown, but the Americans, all they could say was wow. And before you knew it, everybody wanted that Maui Wowie. And by the 80s, it was in such high demand, Hawaiian cannabis was a bigger cash crop in the state than pineapples and sugarcane, worth something like $250 million annually. That's when the government really started coming down on it and made it their mission to stamp out cannabis on the island. From the 70s all the way through 2000, Operation Green Harvest wreaked havoc on Hawaiian cannabis, bringing a lot of strains close to extinction. It was a government program that started out undercover, but pretty soon it was statewide with a whole big budget where police would fly back and forth over the island, over forests and fields, but also over people's homes and backyards, continuously looking for illegal cannabis grows. And when they found them, they would either bomb them with chemicals or send cops in on foot to pull them out by the roots. But by the 2000s, medical cannabis was a thing, and everybody was complaining about the helicopters, so they started shutting it down. But it had done its damage already. The higher prices and lower supply led to a big wave of methamphetamines as a cheap substitute, and today homegrown Maui Wowie can be pretty hard to find. But I've never tried it myself, so if you have, tell me your story in the comments. I want to hear it. Casinos have long been a popular way for Native American tribes to use their land to generate revenue to support their people. But we live in a new age and a new time, and cannabis is looking pretty good these days for Indian nations who can't or don't want to rely on the gaming industry. Connecticut recognized 5 native tribes in the state, but the federal government only recognizes 2 of them, leaving the remaining 3 up the creek, unable to build a casino or otherwise use their land to create jobs for tribal members. So right now, the state is pretty much taking care of the tribe's finances without giving them the opportunity to take care of themselves. Now, when Connecticut passed its recreational laws, it allowed for the recognized Native nations to use their land for cannabis if they wanted to, but it left the ones not federally recognized out in the cold. A new bill being considered would call their lands disproportionately impacted areas, and it would allow them to grow cannabis for the state. And apparently, the state has had a lingering problem of supplying its dispensaries with cannabis, so it would take care of 2 birds with 1 stone, alleviate the supply stress and give those state-recognized tribes a source of income. Indian nations have been relying on tribal casinos for some time. After decades of displacement and mistreatment, they have historically found themselves to be impoverished and relegated to remote reservations. The U.S. government started recognizing them as sovereign nations, free to set up their own laws and customs, and as long as they don't contradict federal law, they can kind of pretty much do whatever they want. And freedom from state regulations and the Gaming Commission meant that casinos were an independent and profitable way to support themselves and pull their people out of poverty. But cannabis legalization is changing the game. Not every tribe has the land nor the neighbors to be able to set up a casino. The Shinnecock Nation in Long Island has been trying for years to open a casino but never could. Now they're finding success in cannabis, as are tons of other tribes throughout the country. Being able to duck out of cannabis regulation, they're able to move faster and more efficiently through the industry than other businesses can. Cannabis is also a step closer toward the native plant medicine that tribes claim as their heritage, more so than the predatory casino industry anyway. The pandemic was a big eye-opener as well to the tribes that had traditionally relied on gambling income, as casinos found themselves shuttering their doors for months at a time. The risks of tying yourself to one source of income has become clear as day, and as cannabis laws and enforcement begin to relax throughout that time, marijuana became a no-brainer for Indian nations governing themselves. Even before the pandemic, casinos were taking hits as states had been letting up on gambling laws and allowing more casinos to open, and online gambling has been gaining popularity for years. So tribes choosing cannabis over casinos is a welcome change that'll hopefully create a more equitable and more healthy community for us all. All right, guys, thank you so much for checking us out. Be sure to like, subscribe, and follow Cough Country News. You don't want to miss all this stuff we got coming up. And remember, around here, it's no sticks, no seeds, just news. Thanks so much, guys.